Hoi, holy shit, and how's it going, pet? Adam Clery from FourFourTwo here, and today it's finally time to talk about Arne Slot, and just what a really funny name that is. Plus, also, if he's a good fit for Liverpool. Right, okay, so Feyenoord. I've definitely been watching loads of them this season. Actually, the funny thing is, during the extensive research stage I conducted for this video, I've seen lots of, conflicting things about him, like different managers he's influenced by, different styles of play, different approaches in possession, different approaches out possession. None of it really seems to line up to one consistent thing, and I actually think that's a pretty good defining trait of him as a manager. Like, if you've never seen Feyenoord play before, this is probably, the best way to sort of think of Arne Slot in your head that you have. You'll see him get loads of comparisons to Jurgen Klopp, and in some regards, specifically how his teams are out of possession, he is a lot like Jurgen Klopp. But the thing is, when they have the ball, when they're in possession, they're a lot more like a Pep Guardiola side, or more specifically, like 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗬𝗓. But then, of course, sometimes the way they defend is a lot more like how 𝗦𝗶𝗴𝗍𝗏 has Arsenal setting up. You'll get loads of people talking about how, from a personality perspective, he's very much like 𝗕𝗫𝗴𝗍𝗏. And then, just purely in terms of aesthetics, he looks loads like 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏 from Dune. So, much to discuss. Okay, so first off, let's get through the Liverpool comparisons, right? This is largely how Feyenoord have been this season. Sometimes it's a 4-3-3. There are a couple of players who come in and out, but by and large, this has been their best shape and their best team. Now, like I said, it's mostly out of possession where they resemble Liverpool, but you wouldn't say it's necessarily this Liverpool they resemble. It's more like classic Klopp Liverpool. And what they'll do is they'll push the entire team right up to the halfway line to restrict the amount of space available for the opposition to play in. They'll target a perceived weak link in their build-up, and then just, rather than sort of headlessly charging around just trying to cause a bit of chaos, they'll pick their moments to win the ball very, very well. So actually, just before I continue, we're going to look at a lot of Eredivisie stats in this video, because that's where they play, and you kind of just got to mentally snip out PSV this season, because they're doing some kind of weird superhuman freak thing that nobody really predicted. And as a result, all the charts that Feyenoord should be top of, and were top of last year, and would probably be top of next year as well, they're now second, because PSV are, insane. But actually, even, amongst that, you can pick out why they're so good at this. So, passes per defensive action, which, if you've not heard, just sort of, how much you let the opposition do before you go in and try and win it back. So that stat, and also total number of high turnovers, and total number of shots coming from a high turnover, they're second, because PSV are freaks. But the total number of goals coming from a high turnover, so how effectively they're doing this, being that the objective is to score goals, they're still top at that. They are the best at this, even if they're not the most at this. And this is a perfect little example of it here, because looking at it at the start, you wouldn't say the opposition are going to feel particularly, constrained. They're not going to feel like a man is sitting on their chest, but as soon as the ball goes out to the area that Feyenoord want to target, bang, everybody comes alive. They close off the passing lanes. The midfielders jump and lock on to any sort of outballs. They turn it over and they get a goal. But quite impressively, actually, they don't just do that for the sake of doing it. If they find the opposition are playing through them, if their attempts to target a weak spot aren't really working, they're not afraid to drop into this Arteta-style 4-4-2 mid-block and try and see if the opposition can play over them or through them. And given the pace they have in the back line, that tends not to be too much of a worry for them. So they're very adaptable with their approach, and that will become a theme. But here is where most of the Liverpool comparisons end and the sort of 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗬𝗓 Guardiola ones begin, because there was a lot of talk even during his playing days. He would watch a lot of Pep's Guardiola. He loved this idea of controlled possession at the back, bringing the opposition onto you and then playing through them quite quickly, and that has kind of been his ethos at Feyenoord and 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏 as much as possible. Now, the key to a lot of what they do is, and I'm almost certainly going to get this wrong, 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. My Dutch is not good. Now, when they've got a 4-2-3-1, he tends to sit as either of the pivots. When they use a 4-3-3 instead, he sometimes is the deepest one in that 3, but other times he can be the 8 as well. Again, Slot tends to adapt where he is in that midfield, depending on how best they're going to use him. And as a result, if you just lob all his heat maps on top of each other, this is the story of his season. He's absolutely vital to everything they do. I don't know what the Dutch for fucking everywhere is, but that's where he plays. But his most important part of this system by a mile is to be that first pass out of defence. If you've watched Brighton, maybe not in the last couple of months, but certainly last season when they were good at doing things, that bounce pass out of defence to just quickly open up the build-up, he's amazing at that. So even when it is a 4-2-3-1, they'll split to this sort of back three with a goalkeeper. He'll get involved to help draw another player onto him. Then they'll sort of stagger the lines of the midfield, so it becomes somewhere between a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3. Anyway, the idea being that when they can get the ball into 𝗕𝗲𝗏, it just bounces off him into a player that can get out of that trap. And that's hard, like, not just for him, but as a way a team has to function. So sometimes they'll stick him in the 8 because there's too much pressure there, but either way, that's what they're trying to do. They want you to come onto them so they can get through you as quickly as possible. Like, if you can bring yourself to cast your mind back to last season, even though it was like, what, 4 billion years ago, that bounce pass out of the defence was like the trademark 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗍 move. And Slots brought it into this team brilliantly. But just to illustrate how effective that is, Feyenoord have the most touches of the ball in the Eredivisie, again ignoring the PSV freak show, but they also have the lowest number of touches in the defensive penalty area and the lowest percentage of their touches in the defensive third, full stop. So they get out of there so quickly. But hang on, so do West Ham, Adam. West Ham get out of the defensive third really quickly. Everton get out of the defensive third really quickly. Burnley get out of the defensive third really quickly. Yes, great points, all of them, but Feyenoord do so with having the lowest number of long passes in the league. They work their way out every single time. Almost. Anyway, yes, so once they've worked their way out of the defensive third, they've got themselves into the attacking third, how do they then get at teams? And I think this might be the thing I've seen the most inconsistent disagreement over in all the stuff I've read and watched. Basically, there's no set way. Now, you may, over the coming weeks and months, see stuff about how they will invert their fullbacks, and that's really good news for Trent Alexander-Arnold. But you also might read stuff about how their fullbacks have to provide all the width because they also invert their forwards, and that's bad news for Trent Alexander-Arnold, but good news for Conor Bradley. And likewise, there's loads of stuff about how this sort of like inverted winger and overlapping fullback is designed to A, get cutbacks into the box from the fullback, or to get in-swinging crosses on the strong foot of the inverted winger into the box. But also at the same time, they don't do this, they don't even pen teams in, they sit deep and they want to play through balls through the middle. And the thing is, it's all true. Like, if you go through a selection of Feyenoord's highlights this season, you will see no shortage whatsoever of fullbacks getting to the byline and providing these cutbacks for tap-ins for the attackers. But also, rather than running into the box, those same attackers will drop into more of a central area, put these crosses in at the back post for late runners, either from wide or from central. And what is weird is that given that those are traits you associate with possession teams, like think about how many times you've seen that cutback from Manchester City, because the only way they can get in round the back, they also are leading the league in this season for the number of through balls. So they attack the space as well. And the reason for that, and I think the main thing I want to try and get across with this video, is there's a reason you've never heard the term slot ball. And it's not just because it sounds incredibly dirty. It's because there is not one clear, defined pattern of play that Arne Slot has in his team. Like, if we look at the Dutch league stats from last season, Feyenoord were the #1 crossers in that division, whether it was a low one from the byline, a swinging one from a slightly more central area. They loved to cross the ball into the box and scored loads of goals that way. But if we look at this season, they've dropped right the way down to mid-table, and that's not normally like a characteristic of a team's attack you ever expect to see that sort of drop-off unless they're suddenly really bad. Like, they've stayed good, they've stayed scoring goals, they're just scoring very different ones. And likewise, the previous season, the number of through balls, splitting the defense, getting somebody in behind, they were pretty average at that, not spectacular at all for the number of goals they were scoring. And this season, they're by far and away the best team at doing it. And that's kind of all you really need to know about Arne Slot as a manager. Like, there's elements of Liverpool's old high pressing style in the way they are off the ball, but there's also elements of like that nice Arsenal 4-4-2 block that exists. And they also play a little bit like 𝗕𝗓𝗍𝗍 when they're coming out from the back, but they're a little bit more direct with it. He's basically assembled like all the best bits of sort of recent football tactical innovation, because that's what's going to be effective for this Feyenoord side. But I don't actually know how helpful this graph is going to be. I may not even put this in the video, but whatever, right? This is Opta's team sequence styles graph that they have for the Premier League. Now, in the bottom right, you have slow and intricate teams that are not looking to move the ball up the field quickly. They have a lot of passes. They basically kill you with their possession. In the very top left, you have teams that just want to get the ball forward as quickly as possible with the fewest number of passes. Basically, long ball sides that will sit deep defensively and then try and hit you really quickly. And quite predictably, that puts Liverpool right here. So they will have loads more of the ball than these teams that are sitting really defensively, but they're also way faster moving up the pitch. They're way more aggressive than the likes of a Man City or a Brighton. Now, obviously, it's not the same league. This is not a perfect way of doing this, but let's just, me and you, have a fun game, right? Put your finger on the screen right now for where you think Feyenoord would be in terms of their play style on this graph comparative to the Premier League teams. I'm going to give you 10 of these Earth seconds to have a little think about it. Remember, you keep hearing how similar they are to Liverpool. He does bits of this, he does bits of that. Finger on the screen now. Where's it going to go? Now, you might be looking at that thinking that how close it is to Liverpool is quite interesting. But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking how close it is to the exact Premier League average play style it is interesting. Is that English? You can pick out virtually any interesting aspect of a modern football team style of play, and you can kind of find it somewhere in Feyenoord. Like, Slot has done that over the course of his time at the club through coaching. Like, they've not spent any money. He's just sort of really got a handle on football at the minute and has Feyenoord playing an awful lot of it. And on this coaching side, you're probably also going to hear a lot about the similarities between him and 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏. Like, he's meant to be a sensational man manager. He really believes in sort of empowering players to get more out of them on the pitch. He's even quoted himself as saying that he wants to win the match in the days prior to it on the training ground. And actually, one thing I think will be particularly interesting to Liverpool fans is he's got a really good track record of converting players from like one position or role into a completely different one. Like, 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏 here is usually deployed at right back, but he's had several performances at centre back this season, and in the Ajax game, probably his best performance of the season, he was the left back. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, we've already talked about, has numerous different roles across the midfield. 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, who's on loan from Newcastle, 𝗘𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, they've both played absolutely everywhere across these four front attacking position. Frängs, I think, has been used deep and central and wide. He's got the team, again, I can't keep stressing this enough, very adaptable to what they need to do. However, there are two consistents, I think, in the sort of the way he plays both this season and last season and even a little bit at Alkmaar, which are very important for two Liverpool players. One bad, one good. So first off, as a centre-back doing slot ball, that's never ever going to catch on. You need to be supremely comfortable receiving the ball on the half turn, receiving the ball under pressure, playing it forward under duress. And yep, Liverpool fans, you know exactly who I'm going to mention here. Konaté is a brilliant defender, but that's not necessarily where his real skill set is. You could see him in sort of like a Brighton or a Man City system being a little bit limited in that regard. Now, obviously, Van Dijk's physical decline, or lack thereof, that feels like a whole other video, isn't really so much of an issue here. He's really good on the ball. He would be class here, and also 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Quansah is an option, so is Joe Gomez, but you would imagine if they're going to spend any big bucks when Slot comes in, it might be on another ball-playing centre-back. One issue they will not have, and something I'm personally quite excited to see, is that when they've sort of played out and they've gone from their 4-2-3-1 into now this sort of 4-3-3, whoever was sort of the 10 in this situation tends to not have like the attacking onus on them. They sort of drop out a little bit to sort of pull defenders around, create that space, and the other 8, it's then their job to sort of get into this more attacking area. This is something he's been fairly consistent on for a number of years now, and I think, honest to God, Dominik Szoboszlai will win the Ballon d'Or doing a job like that. Like, I think he's been really good this season, but 3 goals and 2 assists in the league is just, like, indicative of the fact he's not allowed to influence the game in the areas he really wants to. Like, when Liverpool kind of have this thing going on, Salah moves into the middle, and it's his job to get out from the right side of number 8, keep the width, and obviously he's on his right foot then, so he's doing crosses and playing in, and sometimes you'll just sort of meander into here, but he's never really sort of the attacking focal point, and I just think putting him in that system on the opposite side, where he's going to want to get in there, heaven. And also, whispered this bit, but were there suddenly to be a vacancy on the right-hand side of the forward line. It could also maybe play there as well, although I don't know why that would happen. Now, whenever this does finally get rubber stamped, I don't know how managers' contracts work, we will do another video looking exactly at how Slot will likely set up Liverpool, what players he's probably going to want to keep, where they need to make transfers, that kind of thing. So if you are a Liverpool fan, you're looking forward to that, please do subscribe to us here on FourFourTwo. I know I say it all the time, subscribers are a metric that really, really does help us out. So if you've enjoyed this video, or I don't know, you just like the vibe and think maybe you might enjoy a future one, please do hit that button. It makes my heart grow 3 sizes. We would, as ever, quite like to take the temperature of the Liverpool fan base on this one. So if that is you and you have feelings, thoughts, comments, opinions on this, please do get them in the little box down below. We do try and read and interact and reply to as many of them as we can, so that's always very nice to read. And if you think you're too good for that, you want to get me on the old social medias at Adam Clery. Oh, there it is, CLERY. The 442 ones are in the corner of the video. Latest issue of the mag. I think the new one's out. The Euros preview's out this week, but we've still got the Invincibles one for those of you who like Arsenal. Hope you enjoyed the little gag that's been running in the background the whole video. Let me know if you spotted that. And I'll see you soon. Bye.